Welcome to a new episode of TTG Conversations 5 Questions video series. This episode focuses on the role of tourism in conservation and philanthropy. Taking us through this topic is Bill Bensley, who is affectionately known as the Willy Wonka of design. Hi Bill.
Hi, how are you doing?
Wonderful. Now, Bill is highly qualified, jack of all trades, a gardener, fisherman, architect, interior designer, conservationist, and philanthropist. Bill has seamlessly combined his passions to benefit the environment and communities in creating stunning hotels and resorts in Asia that are also low in environmental impact, such as the Four Seasons, Koh Samui, Capella Ubud, and Shinta Mani Wild in Cambodia. So welcome again, Bill. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I've got 5 questions for you, and here's the first. Now, tourism is recognized as a valuable vehicle for education on conservation and sustainable development, and revenues have been able to improve the living conditions of indigenous communities, which then reduces their reliance on detrimental activities like poaching and logging. Now, what happens when tourism freezes over? How devastating is that for conservation and philanthropic efforts?
Well, I think we're talking, Karen, about my hotel called Shinta Mani Wild, which is in the Cardamom National Forest. That's the southern part of the Cardamom National Forest. It's the greatest rainforest that we have in Southeast Asia. There is a huge pressure on this piece of land that I bought. It's about the size of Central Park and so forth, but it's just a small part of all of the Cardamom National Forest. And there's only a handful, maybe three different resorts within that park that create money in order to be able to pay for the protection of that forest. And unfortunately, the Cambodian government doesn't help, other than the laws that they write, doesn't help in order to enforce the fact that a national park shouldn't be logged and it shouldn't be poached of all of its natural resources like wildlife. So that burden then falls upon the individual owners of these resorts in order to help keep it in one, to keep the forest and the national park forest and the rainforest in one piece, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What happens when
tourism freezes over?
Tourism freezes over. It is a big problem because, like in Singapore, many of the people in Cambodia lose their jobs in tourism, and then they go back to what they knew before, and that is poaching and the illegal logging and so forth. So the pressure is even greater now since COVID has come about. And then our faucet of incoming funds has been turned off, basically. So that means that the protection money that we have to pay every month to a wonderful company called Wildlife Alliance comes out of my pocket. That's what I'm trying to say. And it's a burden, but it's a burden that we took on 7 years ago. And it's something that we're going to take, this burden we're going to take to our grave,
Mm-hmm.
for better or for worse.
Right.
Because it's the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
So in essence, you keep on paying, Karen.
Mm-hmm. The money has come from somewhere, huh? Thank goodness for
Right.
you, Bill. What lessons can the tourism industry learn from this pandemic when it comes to conservation and philanthropic efforts? What can continue to run even with reduced, tourism business and presence of tourists, you think?
What can? Fortunately, we've got 3 other hotels. Fortunately or unfortunately, we have 3 other hotels in Siem Reap, and they're also part of the Shinta Mani Foundation. And in conjunction with that, we've got this huge farm project, which is the Shinta Mani Farm. So we have now people that used to work in the hotel working on the farms, and that we give them a small stipend in order, and hopefully for not too much longer, a small stipend, and in essence, everybody has enough to eat. That's what I'm trying to say, Karen. Everyone has enough to eat. And also in Shinta Mani Wild, we have now a chicken farm, we've got vegetable farms and so forth, and it's all organic and whatnot. So it is self-sustaining. Unlike Singapore, Thailand, where I live, and in Cambodia and Laos and Vietnam, much of Vietnam, are still agrarian. So no one's starving. They can still go back to the countryside and farm and plant and eat, which is good.
Right, that's right. It's good during a crisis and pandemic.
Yes.
Now, you have been talking about your real example in Shinta Mani Wild in Cambodia's rainforest and how it contributes to the Wildlife Alliance ecotourism projects. Can you tell us more about this partnership?
Our partnership is a fantastic one. And we're the Johnny-come-latelys. We're the new in the group. And that there's a wonderful lady called Sawana Gauntlet. And she's an American lady. She's a conservationist at heart, and she's been that her entire life. And she has spent her entire life savings and so forth in trying to protect and doing a very damn good job of it, 1 million acres of rainforest that we have. And she goes around the world and she bangs the drum of conservation. She raises a lot of money in order to be able to support her 115 person private army. These guys many of them are all armed with AK-47s, and we never use them, but we have, for example, just in the South, we have seized in the last 4 years something like 750 chainsaws. And do you know how much damage one chainsaw, Karen, can do in one day? 100 trees, bam. And if they're not looking and then getting out. So we have this army, and I support something like 10 of those fellas, right? So I'm a small player in all of this, but it's a well-organized army that has the ability to arrest and prosecute violators. And we have returned back to the wilderness something like 70,000 animals that have been caught, and some of them are injured, so that there's also a halfway house for animals that allow them to get better before they're released back into the wilderness. So it's a very frustrating life that I put myself in that it's sometimes 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and that for example, all of a sudden we on a property we see gibbons come, fantastic, 2 steps forwards, but then around the corner we've heard that somebody's burning the forest at the edges on the same single day. So there's always good and bad in what we're doing, and it takes money and it's a struggle, but we have to have more people taking responsibility for the wilderness all around the world, not just in Cambodia, but all around the world, because if our wilderness falls, for example, this particular wilderness falls, then no rain will fall back onto the rice bowls of Thailand and Laos and Cambodia. So everything falls apart. Everything is connected. I hope that made sense.
Yes, that makes sense. Of course, yes. Now, you also mentioned about how you had to fund your the efforts yourself now because of the lack of tourism and tourists. Are there other remedies for these challenges in your effort to support Wildlife Alliance? I know you have a raffle draw. Can you tell us about that raffle draw?
Oh yeah, we have for Earth Day. We have a raffle draw 3 days at Shinta Mani Wild. It's worth something like $10,000 plus the stays at the project at the hotels in Siem Reap. Nice package, and then I make for donations of $50 to $500 and more. I'll make custom-made safari shirts with all sorts of all sorts of
Wow.
patches on them and so forth. Yeah.
Looks wonderful.
Yeah. Also, I'll make that, and then there's also for $100, we do these custom-made T-shirts with my art. And that's another part. That's another story too, Karen. Is that the last 3 years I've started painting. While I have an office of 120 designers in Bali and Bangkok. We do these fantastic resorts all over the world. But personally, I've taken back to painting. And I have about, I have got 3 shows at the moment. One big show coming up in August, and it's about 900 square meters where I'm going to show about 80 paintings. It's going to be a big show. But the thing why I'm telling you this is that every single penny that we bring in, not just the profits, every single penny that we bring in, that's going to go towards conservation of the Cardamom National Forest.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful, Bill. Wonderful. You know, a popular prediction about post-pandemic travel is a rise in travelers' preference for less commercialized, off-the-beaten-track destinations with an opportunity to connect with the local community. Should this prediction be fulfilled, is there a risk of such destinations being disturbed for the sake of tourism recovery? What should destination managers bear in mind when developing zones for tourism in the future?
Well, I think that's a very good question, Karen, in that how to say this properly. I am totally against mass tourism. And mass tourism, say in Phuket, for example, where I live in Thailand, has ruined the island. And these package tours coming from all over come and they take, and they leave very little. And for us tourism from around the world, there's many examples of where tourism can ruin a place. For a long time now, I've been a proponent of high yield tourism, which means that that has minimal impact but high yield. So, for example, Shinta Mani Wild, on this huge piece of property, there's only 15 tents. And those tents they're built along the side of a river, and that something like 2 kilometers long. So the one tent to the next tent, you can't even see it. There's no way. So it's a very minimal impact. But because we charge $2,500 per night, we have the ability then to take portion of that money, or we did before COVID, that portion of the money, and then bring that back to be able to pay our private army in order to keep this all intact. So that minimal impact in tourism is a good thing. Mass tourism, I have no time for. If I was Trump, I would build this giant wall all the way around the Cambodian National Forest. I'd build this giant wall and make it 100 meters high and allow nobody to go in. And that would be the greatest thing possible, that nobody could go in. And then all of the animals would regenerate, the trees would regenerate. That would be fantastic. That's the ideal situation, Karen, for sure. Mm-hmm. But that ain't gonna happen. We're not gonna get Mexico or even Sammy to pay for it, right? We're not gonna get either. You gonna pay for the wall? No. So there has to be ways to mitigate. Mm-hmm. When I start a new project, like for example, the Capella in Ubud, I am faced with this beautiful, beautiful site. And the way I look at it as an architect, I always think to myself, well, how can I take this beautiful site and mitigate damage? Because no matter what I do as an architect, even though I'm a pretty good architect, I'm going to screw it up. Yeah. I'm going to make it not as good as Mother Nature has it, because there's no competition with nature. So it's all about how can I how can I make the minimal amount of impact on this natural piece of land? And that's what we do in a good, that's what we do in a sort of good way. I hope that answers your question, Karen.
Yes, thank you so much, Bill. Thank you so much for spending time with us today. And that's all the 5 questions I have for you. We will have time for a lot more questions next time when we meet, yeah?
Okay, thank you so much. It's great talking to you.
Great talking to you too. Now, to the audience, thank you for joining us, and I'll see you at the next episode. Take care and goodbye.